let's talk about, and you sent me this, Jim. The Massachusetts state flag is being problematic, right?
Well, it's actually funny. So I think you had actually sent me this originally a few months ago, and I read it and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then sure enough, as I'm reading through my town warrant, there's a vote to remove the state flag because it's problematic. So yeah, so then when I saw that, I sent you this from my town that's now putting it on their agenda for our town meeting.
Let me do this really quick. Let me get this up for everybody. Oh, that's the flag. Here's Article 34, and this is of Grafton, right?
Correct.
All right. So Article 34 states to see if the town will vote to adopt the following resolution in support of changing the flag and seal of Massachusetts. And I always hate this whereas stuff. Whereas the history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is replete with instances of conflict between European colonists and the native nations of the region who first extended the hand of friendship to the colonists on their shores in 1620 and helped them to survive starvation during the settlers' first winters on their land. Whereas members of the native nation for whom the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is named were ambushed and killed by Miles Standish, first commander of the Plymouth colony at Wessagusset, now Weymouth, in April of 1623, barely 2 years after the Pilgrims arrived. Whereas the colonial broadsword held by a white hand above the head of an indigenous person of the Massachusetts flag and seal is molded after Miles Standish's own. Let's get to the next one. Broadsword, borrowed for that purpose from the Pilgrim Hall in Plymouth by the illustrator Edmund Garrett in 1884. I can't. There's so much to read. It goes on, right? And I think what the issue they have, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the design they believe is hand with the sword in it over the indigenous person is supposed to represent that we're keeping the indigenous person down. Is
It's
that
Yeah, and it's funny because literally almost every single thing that you just read in that article is like a complete lie. Like first of all, they say a white hand. Do you see a white hand? I see a yellow hand. I see that a hand
yes,
the same skin color as the Native American. So
yes.
where are they pulling white out of?
Well, so again, I went online to get the actual meaning because again, like far be it from people to actually go look into the actual meaning of things. And again, outsourcing or thinking, the common theme throughout all our things is people hear stuff and they believe it when they can actually, like you said, go find a history, go look it up. What's the actual, how is this flag designed, right? So the flag of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts displays on both sides the state coat of arms on a white field. The shield is meant to depict an Algonquin Native American with bow and arrow. The arrow is pointed downward, signifying peace. How horrible, right? However, the face of the figure is modeled on a photo of Ojibwe chief Thomas Littleshell. A white star with 5 points appears next to the figure's head, signifying Massachusetts as a U.S. state. A blue ribbon surrounds the shield bearing the state motto: By the sword we seek peace, but peace only under liberty. Above the shield is the state military crest, the bent arm holding a broadsword aloft. The sword has its blade up to remind that it was through the American Revolution that liberty was won. The sword itself is a copy of one belonging to Miles Standish, so that's right, and signifies the philosophy that one would rather lose their right arm than live under tyranny. Seems a little bit different than what they were saying it's about.
Yeah, and it's funny too because you go into the warrant and notice how they say what does it say? It says native nations is the
Yes.
terminology. They don't say which native nations because if you were actually to bring up the history of what happened in that time period, it goes completely against the narrative that they're portraying in this warrant. So the pilgrims. So first of all, the pilgrims were not oppressors. The pilgrims were the oppressed. They um, were religiously persecuted. So that's why they came to the New World, was to be free of religious persecution. And when they arrived in, well, originally Cape Cod and then Plymouth, um, they the tribe that they met originally was the Wampanoag tribe, and they made a peace treaty with the Wampanoags because the Narragansett Indians were the ones that were warring with the Wampanoags at the
Yep.
time. So they came into, a new world, not seeking colonization, but seeking freedom from religion. And they came into a world with a lot of native tribes at war with one another. So the whole narrative that, like, the pilgrims were here with their broadswords and, you know here to colonize the entire West is a completely false narrative of what
Yes.
actually happened. And it's funny too, because in they gave like a presentation in town. They're like, oh, we talked with the local Indian tribe about the state flag, and that's the Nipmuc tribe, which is completely different than the Wampanoags and the Narragansett. So it's just they're trying to rewrite history, and they're trying to paint a broad brush over history, and really try to confuse people.
Well, another thing too that again the law of unintended consequences, and I'm bringing up the full screen in a second because there's a nice chief head behind me. But the law of unintended consequences is like when I go get butter now, and Land O'Lakes is just a Land and Lakes and the Indians removed. So I'm assuming, and just assuming because it doesn't say what the new Massachusetts flag design should look like, but I'm assuming what they'll probably do is they'll probably take the Indian off it, right? Everything that is offensive to Indians, quote unquote, they take them off of it. And to me, when I was growing up, I always loved it because I'm a little bit older, watch cowboys and Indian stuff, and you like the Indians, you're like yeah, and they were super cool, and you see them in places, and you're like oh they're kind of represented, they're in places, that's pretty cool. And now they're slowly disappearing from view from people. And it's even funny because behind me is a chief thing, and it's just so happens I remember this, as I was a chief in the military, and it was a sign of respect, and there was a whole big. I wasn't prepared for this, but there's a whole big thing of how they came up with a chief, and as a sign of respect, and how they modeled this after a certain chief, this design out of respect. Like, listen, there's things that we've done in our past. Okay, I wasn't there, you weren't there, but our country was based on thing, yes. But out of respect for the people, shouldn't we like have some avenues to show them in a good light, or show them on stuff? I love seeing Indians on stuff. And again, if your idea and your solution is just to hey, this is offensive, remove them, I think you're actually doing more harm than good.
Yeah, I agree completely. And there's so much to unpack here too, because this whole narrative of, again, the colonization of everything, like, the most people might not realize, but on the Mayflower itself, when it came over, I mean, there was, when you had groups of people interacting that are coming from different parts of the world, you had disease and famine like you've never seen before. And most people don't realize half the people on the Mayflower didn't make it through. Over
Yeah.
half the people didn't make it through the first winter because of disease, and that was an unfortunate consequence of when the two groups met. Is that it created a lot of disease, and that was the biggest factor of what happened. It happened to all different different sides, and but yeah, you bring up a great point with the cancel culture aspect of things, because it's like you look at society and who's getting removed from culture today. You look at the Land O'Lakes Indian is getting removed. The
Uncle
guy from
Ben,
Uncle Ben's, is getting removed.
Aunt
The
Jemima.
Aunt Jemima is getting removed. And again, those
Yep.
companies had to pay royalties to those families. So not only are they removing them, but then those families now are losing income because they're not getting royalties anymore. And then look who's not getting removed. We still have the Quaker Oats guy. We still have the Lucky Charms guy. So it's like
Yeah.
we're only canceling the people of minority backgrounds. So if we keep going down this path, we're going to have a culture, a society where we don't have minorities on any packaging or anything. It's going to be all, Caucasian people.
Or
So
indescript, right?
yeah. So I think I'm going to stand up in this town war, and I'm going to be like, the only genocide that was committed is going to be the cultural genocide of taking all these people off our packaging. And like you said, it's a sign of respect. And the other thing that this whole warrant misses is like, look, we are 300 years removed. Well, 1620, right? So we're
Yeah.
400 years removed from the date that they had mentioned here. As a society, we're like America, like you said, it's such a melting pot where it's like my wife's family, like we're all mixed. We have backgrounds from all different parts of the country, and you have like, you know, you have people that like have backgrounds. You have look at our senator, right? Elizabeth Warren. Oh, I'm Native American,
Yeah.
But like you actually have people that are actually Native American too. So it's just I don't know. It's just like it's trying to play victim here, where you're like, oh, it's us versus them, but it's like we're all Americans.
Yeah.
We all share the same history. We're all part of the same group of people, and we're all so mixed now. It's like we're all one people. So I think it's just very divisive as well that they try to pin these two sides against each other.
So here's one thing I've always told people in one of my little bits. Um, I think what happened is like in the 1960s there was the space race. After the space race was kind of over, we had the Cold War, and after the Cold War, life's been pretty good. Life's been pretty good for Americans on a whole. There's been a couple wars, but I think what happens is because things are good and because people want to make a difference, what they start doing is they start getting involved or looking into things. And I think one of the new things that people do is they take offense for other people. I am offended because you're using an Indian. I'm offended because you use this woman's face on your syrup. I am offended because of this. And it's this offense culture, and it's this need to do something. And I think it's a need to do things in everybody, but because some people are busy, raising families, some people are busy trying to keep their job, or doing some other things, that there's people that just have a lot of free time and want to seem like they're actually contributing and they're moving the world forward, and in fact they're doing the complete opposite. They're doing the complete opposite. And like I said, I think when we used to all, when the 9/11 is another perfect example. 9/11 sucked, obviously, but it was great when the whole country came together with a focus. And I think that's my point. When the country was together with a focus on, getting to space and, the Cold War, we're gonna beat them and we're gonna be better because capitalism's better than socialism or communism. And then 9/11, hey, we're all Americans, we're all in this together. Who are? Let's go do good and great things. And I think that's also indicative of what we talked about a little bit earlier. All this division and separation and telling on your neighbor and not being able to talk to people. This is just going to amplify things like this more, because now what's going to happen is there's power that these people get from being offended. And like, look, we took on something, but here's the other good point behind this too, is because there was another flag controversy up in Boston where there was a certain flag flying. They said, hey, listen, can we fly a religious flag? And they're like, no, we'll let you fly the pride flag, but we're not going to let you fly your religious flag. And that had to be fought. And again, it's like, who's making these decisions? If everything's supposed to be equal, if we're supposed to celebrate everything, let's celebrate it, or celebrate nothing. Also, if we're gonna have representation, let's have representation. But if you could give me a good reason, or maybe came up with a design, maybe that's one of the problems. Maybe they have a design with a whole bunch of Native Americans on it, and all the different tribes that were here and stuff. Maybe, but what I would hate to see is what happens every time is they remove them. They remove them. How about instead of that, how about we just have a learning? Can't we just have a learning out of this? Like people in high school or elementary school. Hey, listen, you live in Massachusetts. Here's the flag. Here's what it means. Here's a little bit of our history. I used to go to, I don't know if you went to Plymouth Plantation when you were a kid. I went to Plymouth Plantation. there's still Indians there, still Native Americans, right? You go there, you sit down in their huts with them, and you talk to them, and you go talk to the pilgrims and stuff, and you sit there and you're like, they got along pretty well, but you also know what happens. You know what happens long term, but you also know that's history. Most countries, most nations have fought wars, have done horrible things, and that's no excuse to wipe it away. But I think what has to happen is we have to look back at history, and I think we have an obligation. This should be the obligation that everyone has: is learn from it. We're hopefully at a place, and who knows, like China might be wanting Taiwan, so we might be in a war again, right? But hopefully we'll be at a place that, listen, everyone has their land, everyone has their resources. Let's work together. But this doesn't help working together. All this does is continue the divide, continue the narratives, have us looking backwards instead of looking forwards. And again, we have to look backwards to see where we come from, but we also have to say that's where we came from. Let's do better and let's go forward. I don't think these people want to do it because they'll get a new flag. It'll be something else they're offended about.
Yeah, and here's the thing: if we had leaders from the Narragansett tribe, the Wampanoags, the Nipmucks, like the Cherokee, you name it. Like if all these leaders of these of these tribes that were still here in the United States were like stepping forward and like leading this effort and saying, hey, this is something that we want to change, I would be like, this 100%. But that's not who's stepping forward. Like you said, it's people that are offended for other people. So it's like when you actually talk to these organizations, like I don't hear anyone really saying that this should be changed. So you have this lady stepping up in town meeting that has like the complexion of an iPhone flashlight that's like leading this discussion, and you're like, well, where are the people that are actually victimized by this? Like, let's hear them speak on this.
Yeah. Well, there again. So here's the other thing: is there are some people. I did some research. I wish I could have, got some pictures, but supposedly there was one woman who spoke about it, and she was an indigenous person, and she didn't like it. Okay, but again, is it just come down to one person, or can other voices be heard? Like you said, can the Wampanoags come in and be like, listen, we don't mind being represented. Actually make them a little more buff, or make
Show
it look a
some
little,
gains.
yeah, gives, but can we have that discussion? But here's the thing: how long is this flag? This flag has been around since 1884, and now it's a problem. Now it's a problem, and again, I think what happens, and one of the other things that a lot of people forget is a lot of these things are in the past. We knew history better. We taught history better than we do now. And people said, hey, listen, out of respect and honor for them, we want to do this. And these were kind of like, hey, listen, we can't go back in history and fix this. We can't change what was done, but we respect your contribution. We respect what you did. We wish it was different. So let's honor your sacrifice. Let's honor your legacy and put it on something that people will see all the time. And then you got people that come along like, that's offensive. Let's tear it down. So no one knows about it. It blows my mind. I apologize.
No, and we know the other reason that we know that there's an agenda behind this, and it's not just people coming up genuinely upset about the flag, especially in Grafton of all places.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
If you look at the seal of Grafton, it's a Native American on the town seal. So you're telling me that this group of people, they want to go after the state flag, but they're not even questioning anything, or they're not even mentioning anything about this town seal of Grafton. Maybe that's next. I don't know. But to me, it's more of like there's an agenda behind this to remove the state flag, because if they were genuine and organic, to me, it would make sense that they would also want to put a warrant up to change the town seal, because in my opinion, there's probably more to go after on the town seal than there is on the state flag. But the state flag talks about pushing back against tyranny. So maybe
Yeah.
that's the reason why they want to get rid of that one.
Well, again, one of the things we're starting to see is the government will definitely help and favor people that will give the government more power to do things. So I think, like, I don't think this is a losing battle. I hope you do stand up, but I do think this is a battle the government likes to get in because, again, if you can silence people, if you can divide people, if you can put people in classes, and if you can say you were bad, you were never here, your family was never here, but we're inherently bad people because what we did 400 years ago, they're going to use that. And what we have to start doing is telling the government, you know what, you have a limited jobs to do. You should only be doing certain things and back off on everything else. But the problem is a lot of people now want to use the government as a cudgel to get what they want, and the government is more than happy to take that because the more they take that, the more power we give them, and then it's going to be tyrannical. And I don't know if I'm going to have to lose my right arm, is it, or whatever, to not live under tyranny. But you're going to have to give up something. You're going to have to give up something. So what we really need to do is, again, maybe like we said earlier when we talked about the bias incident report, is have these discussions with these people. The problem is, and maybe if you get up and you talk to these people, Jim, the problem is in the arena of ideas, their ideas don't hold up, and they're not going to want to engage, and it's going to devolve into name calling, which is sad. Name calling, and you don't understand and you don't know, and that's because you're this or that, or they'll throw everything out instead of getting to an actual challenge of ideas, a talking, and maybe, hey, listen, it comes to maybe they tell you something like, you know what, I don't mind if we change the flag as long as you still represent the Native Americans. Maybe, maybe you learn, but I think more often than not, they'll probably learn. What do you think?
Yeah, and the other person that they bring up in that town warrant is Miles Standish. Like the broadside's designed after Miles Standish's broadsword. Miles Standish, he was he was like a journeyman. He was there to protect the pilgrims from like wolves, and like, you know, he was like these are a bunch of religious people that are coming in, sailing across the world and starting in a new world. He was like kind of the muscle to protect them. Like he was long dead before any of anything that they're talking about happened, you know. And but he's used as like the main one of the main targets in this warrant. So it's just absolutely shows how crazy people are willing to rewrite history and really change the truth in order to you know, pretty much get what they want, and like you said, use the government to get what they want.
Yeah, we got to stop doing that. Well, you have to keep us posted on what happens with this flag. Hopefully, hopefully cooler heads prevail. Hopefully, we can have a discussion. And again, maybe when you come back and we have a discussion, if you go there and they say some things, we can have some new information, or maybe we could also, you could teach them some things too. So, again, Jim, thank you very much for another great Justin Thurber show. You have a wonderful day, and until next time, everybody, take care.
Thank you, you too.